Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you all for attending today's session. The idea for today is that, we deal with a lot of startups and we support a lot of startups in the ecosystem at very early stages. And often a question, pops up that is there, any scientific methods or is there any methodologies that can be taught to a startup or probably they can experience? So success rate for a startup can actually improve. And, we tried answering that question a lot of times within our programs that we do. And over the years of experience that we had, we thought, why not structure these learnings that we had over the programs, and why not, come up with a special kind of a program which is for very early stage, startups, and which answers or which helps the startups in, various ways at early stages, and while they're taking their nascent, steps within their businesses, and helps them along the way. And that is where a thought for a startup school came up. Uh, we tried to do justice with it, that we should not keep it very theoretical in nature, and typically this should all not only support the tech ecosystem in India, wherein we see a lot of startups within the tech ecosystem, but again there are a lot of businesses and ventures who are there in the creative space, or led by women entrepreneurs, which are purely not technology oriented, but again they require the same support that any other tech entrepreneur would also require. uh, and that is where we collaborated with Caspian Debt, with their experience of supporting more than 100 startups till date, and providing them with funding and other strategic support. And we came up with an initiative for Startup School. To discuss this more deeply today, that is where we thought why not keep this as an open forum and discuss this with startups. And today we have with us Ms. Ragini Chaudhary, uh, who is the Director in Business Strategic Initiatives for Caspian, and has an experience of more than 20 years in microfinance, impact investment, and development. Prior to Caspian, Ragini served as CEO for Grey Matter Capitals India, where she led setting up an $8 million early stage investment fund as well, and an accelerator for mobile edtech companies and initiatives for ecosystem development for education. As a background, Ragini comes from a management, as a management graduate from Mirma, qualified management accountant from Chartered Institute of Management Accounting, and a UK certified coach from International Coaching Federation. Ragini will be moderating today's session, and the speaker with us today is Mr. Chintan Bakshi, who is currently the partner for CIO with the CIO and CEO for Startup Oasis. Startup Oasis again is a Rajasthan-based technology business incubator promoted by RICO and CII itself. Uh, Chintan Bakshi completed his BTech from IIT Delhi and continued to do MBA from IIM Bangalore. He has worked in companies like Maruti Suzuki and Indian Hotels, as well as he was the Chief Innovation Manager for Gyan, that incubates rural innovations. So typically within Gyan, he also did his own entrepreneurial venture and had a successful exit from it. So I welcome both the guests today, and I'll ask Ragini to probably start up with the questions and probably give enlightenment to most of our viewers today and most of our attendees today.
Thank you, Shashi, for that introduction. And thanks, Chintan, for making time. The subject of entrepreneurship has been very, very interesting, and a lot of people talk. And it is very similar to leaderships. Are you a born leader or are you made a leader? So what are your thoughts on, can entrepreneurship be taught?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ragini, for coming on the panel. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I think very interesting question, and I guess I'm not very sure about the answer. There are some aspects of entrepreneurship which definitely need to be taught, and I think that's what Shashi was alluding to. Though there are, I think, certain softer kind of capabilities, abilities, etc., which perhaps may not be taught, but that doesn't mean that one is born with it. Those are things which one kind of develops over a period of time, right? So, I mean, if we look at some aspects of entrepreneurship which could be taught, and I think these are things which have probably become clearer in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, I think after we have seen this boom, startup boom, and perhaps starting with the early 2000, when it wasn't that much of a boom, but what happened in 2011, 12 with Internet 2.0, etc. And then the entire thing about social impact space, where Ragini, you also have been involved with quite some time, and I have been involved as an entrepreneur. So I think over these 10 to 15 years, there have been some kind of concepts or some theories, if I may use the word, which have been developed. That's what the objective of this program that we have decided to jointly do is that, can we extract some of these concepts, some of these theories, and try to create a kind of a startup school. And perhaps we'll talk more about it and see if some of these can be well communicated. So yeah, I mean, the sort of diplomatic answer to your question is yes and no. Some things which can be, and that's what I think the effort is. We'll try to.
Yeah, thank you for your candid response. We at Caspian, we are a 16-year-old impact fund. So we've seen several founding teams and entrepreneurs, and especially in our debt side, we've funded like 140 companies so far. And I think you have seen more than that, because 1 out of 10 startups ends up raising funds, and we come to a category where, they've certainly reached a stage. So what, according to you, is that those 9 entrepreneurs who don't make it, what are the reasons for that? Why do usually startups end up failing?
Yeah, no, I think that's something which probably has been debated and researched quite a lot. What are the reasons for startup failure? So while most researchers really talk about the fact that the entrepreneur was unable to create a product which the customer wanted, right? There was something wrong with the product market or the problem solution fit. The entrepreneur ended up investing his energy, time, resources, efforts into creating something which ultimately the customer did not want. So, most studies say that anywhere between 40 to 60% of the failures happen because of this reason. But, I think what would be interesting would be to really go into it. Why does it happen? It's not, everybody knows, I mean, that you need to make a product which the customer wants. I mean, it's like basic MBA kind of thing. And now it's largely mainstream, but still we make the mistake. And I think and that's something that we are trying to address through this startup school that we have launched together is the entire learning about, the prototyping sort of DNA or testing and validation DNA, or, what we call as the learn, build, measure loop. I mean, there are various names. It's agile in the software world. It's prototyping, it's design thinking in the design world. It is lean startup in the tech startup world. But essentially, it's really boiling down to the same thing that you need to imagine some, obviously entrepreneurs have a vision, but you need to tone down that vision and create a unit block of that vision, which is testable, right? And then you need to somehow go into the market and test it in a very frugal manner and learn from it and create the next level of prototype, test it. So it's a continuous feedback loop of doing, building, learning, recalibrating, etc. Now, I think one of the reasons, and it really boils down to the first question, whether entrepreneurship can be taught, is that, our education system and large parts of society to that extent are also built in such a way that they don't function in that sense. I mean, our learning is linear. class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, examination pass, you go to the next level. But in the case of when you're trying to do a startup, when you're trying to bring a new product into the market where there is no industry market, that linear process of planning and then executing doesn't work. That's what most large companies also do. It needs to be a series of prototypes, and there needs to be a series of failures which happen fairly soon, and incorporating those learnings. So I think I would say fundamentally, when we say that the startup ended up building a product that the customer did not want is the number one reason. But the real reason behind this is that somehow this learning of using this feedback loops is not into the DNA. And that's what we're trying to change. Hopefully, let's see how it goes.
Yeah. That's a great point you make, that paying customer is at the center. So there's no point in a hi-fi product which nobody wants to buy. So I think that's a great point you make. There are more than, our startup ecosystem is no longer nascent. Now we have incubators, accelerators, we have sector specific accelerators, even corporates run their own accelerators. So what would be new about this program that you're doing,
No, yeah, I think, that's I think probably the fundamental question, why the need for another program, and how is it different than, there are too many programs, a lot of programs happening, especially now with happening virtually, and corporates doing it, incubators doing it, governments doing it, colleges doing it, etc. So how is this different? I think this is fundamentally different, primarily because of the fact that somehow the effort in this program is really to build that DNA of startup in very early stage entrepreneurs, right? We are therefore trying to say that, okay, if you are a startup which has already started, perhaps your focus may be more on fundraising and building a team, etc., etc. Once the kind of cycle has started, once you are down the road, then trying to do fundamental changes and trying to build your perspective around build, measure, learn, etc. may be tough. Therefore, the call that we have taken is that let's look at a bunch of entrepreneurs who have still not started, or they have maybe started in a very small way. That's one. So we are looking at very early stage aspiring entrepreneurs, idea stage entrepreneurs, and trying to do this intervention at that stage, so that when they do their prototyping, when they are out in the market, they go with some tools such that the chances of failure, etc., are significantly reduced. So that's one. And second thing, I think we also realized over the last 7 to 8 years is that while there are programs for tech entrepreneurs, while there are programs for folks who are doing stuff around deep tech or health tech, agri tech, essentially tech focused, there is a large sector of entrepreneurs, which Shashi also alluded to, which are also solving significant problems, but they may not be tech first. They may be tech enabled. So someone doing something around, let's say, the traditional crafts of India, or someone doing something around food or the creative industry, women entrepreneurs, some of them are fairly passionate. While the tech entrepreneurs get more opportunities, and some part of these skills, etc., they get access to it through various programs, competitions, boot camps, etc., that are there. But this sector, which we may even want to call the long tail of entrepreneurship, so while it is long, but it's also large in terms of numbers, and it also is large in terms of the impact that it can potentially create. There is no program specifically focused around it. So purposefully, I think our objective has been to try this, to keep this program in such a manner that even a woman entrepreneur from a tier 2, tier 3 city, or a creative entrepreneur from trying to do something in design or fashion or etc., can participate, and the program is structured in such a way that he or she can sort of gain from it, seek benefit from it.
So tell me about your experience in startup OSs and all that, which makes it. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, you have experience of being the CEO of Startup Oasis. You've been an entrepreneur yourself. So what are your learnings from these experiences that you're bringing to this program, which makes you most equipped to run this for the long tail, you understand, who don't have the access?
So I think fundamentally two things, Ragini. So at Startup Oasis, which is really a part of the CIO continuum, where we look at incubation, acceleration, seed funding, and then also capital now through the Bharat Fund, as you may know. In Startup Oasis is really part of the incubation vertical or SBU. And our focus in that SBU or in that vertical is very early stage entrepreneurs. And also looking at entrepreneurs from tier 2, tier 3 cities, geographies which are underserved, right? I mean, there's no point doing an incubation program in the tech hub of Bangalore, right? I mean, the kind of programs that we do. Our focus is to try and see how we can bring up the passionate entrepreneurs from the tier 2, tier 3 cities, from sectors which are otherwise ignored. So I think our experience over the last 7 to 8 years has been of working with such entrepreneurs who are not part of the mainstream tech entrepreneurship sector. So therefore, I think this kind of understanding of whether it's the lean startup processes, prototyping, founding team, fundraising fundamentals. We also were talking the other day about compliances, startup related business compliances, etc. All of these things, which in a Bangalore, you would sort of get to know because you are moving around in that ecosystem. You are having coffee and beer with other entrepreneurs who have been there, done that. So that knowledge exchange sort of happens just because you're based there. But if you are an entrepreneur doing an interesting craft startup in Jodhpur, you may not have that ecosystem around you and folks around you, mentors around you, so that all this knowledge, which may be more easily accessible in a Bangalore or a Silicon Valley for that matter, is not available. So therefore, the need there is higher. And, if you look at the type of kind of knowledge gap which exists, I think we quickly touched upon it. I think at one level, it's the methodology of prototyping, lean startup, build, measure, learn. It's also, there are a lot of things which are different about a startup building process. So funding happens in a slightly different manner. It's typically, as compared to early stage working capital or debt, it is equity and maybe it gets supplemented with debt. The team formation happens in a different way. There are things about ESOPs, equity sharing. There's an entire different architecture of organization. There are founders, then there are initial team members, and then there are mentors, advisors, etc. So all this is something which may not be that intuitively understandable for someone who's in a tier 2, tier 3 city, or a woman entrepreneur who's running a small home business, or some designer who's trying to do something around craft. They tend to think slightly more conventionally, that this is a business. I need to start a company and I need to go to the bank to seek loan. I mean, that's if they use that approach, they may not be able to go that extra mile.
There is one question by one of the participants. They're saying that, we have a team, we have a prototype, we have a plan, but we don't have mentorship. We don't know what to do next. So how will this program solve for this?
So this program, just to be fairly clear about it, is not really positioned for startups who have formed a team and have started working on a particular product or a business, and now they need mentorship to move ahead. So really speaking, this program is not focused on that target segment. But if you are at a stage where you are still ideating, you have an idea and you are trying to figure out what's the best way of validating it, what's the best way of launching it, prototyping it. If you haven't launched, which is what I was trying to say earlier, then this program sort of gives you a deep understanding of what are the pitfalls, what are the learnings, what are the processes, how you do this, how you form a team, how you raise funding. And the other thing, interesting thing about the program is that none of the sessions are taken by theoretical experts, right? All the sessions will be taken by practitioners, startup founders, people who have built businesses, people who have funded startups, people who have tech experts, product leads in funded tech startups. So all the sessions that we are doing, while they cover a particular topic, there may be a theoretical framework around it, but these are taken by people who have been there and done that. So they bring that level of understanding and expertise and their experience into it. And finally, because I think, again, coming back, Ragini, from your earlier question, that can entrepreneurship be taught? A lot of these concepts are really things which seep down once you do it. So therefore, we are going to have around 4 sessions as part of this program, which are almost like sprints or case discussions, where we look at a real life case. We try and get an entrepreneur who has actually been there in that particular situation. And the participants form groups and deliberate and come up with solutions. And the entrepreneur gives them some sense of how the actual situation was. So there's a good amount of practice also as part of the session.
Right. So I think this more or less answers one question. Can I know again what exact program you're talking about? I think some people missed it. And also, could you give an over? I think Shashi will, at the end, will do that. But there is one question by a participant, Sandeep, who says, could you please give an overview of program that a selected applicant goes through and a timeline? Also, if any financial support is provided. So maybe, I don't know, Chintan, if you want to take this, or whether Shashi will cover this, or...
So maybe Shashi, I guess... we'll probably cover it towards the end.
Towards the end, yeah. So Sandeep and just hold on to your question. We will get into those details. We'll send you material that you need. But somebody has asked an interesting question. How does one deal with failures?
Right. So I see that there are 2 aspects to failure. There's an emotional aspect. And then there is a kind of a more sort of existential aspect, right? I guess I'll take the existential aspect first. See, the fact is that if you are a startup, then you will fail, right? There is, failure is an intrinsic part of the startup process. And that to a certain extent also tackles the emotional part of it, right? Because emotions is nothing but our ability to deal with existence around us based on our own value systems, etc. So, failure is an intrinsic part of the startup process, right? So, and that's also one of the topics that we are going to cover. It's not easy to teach failure, accepting failures, but, I think over and over again through these exercises that we'll be doing, through these case studies, sprints, etc., we'll try to, make sure that this message gets through, that, you need to fail. In fact, what we say is that you need to fail fast. The cost of failure should be low, because the fact is that when you do a startup, you will fail. So it's better to fail early, learn, build something, fail again a couple of times, and then figure out what is working, what is not working, so that your chances of success as a business increases. It will never be 100%. All right. So failure is an intrinsic part of the startup process. Accept it. And, that's where I think our education system doesn't prepare us for it. It's designed in a separate way, where only if you pass, you kind of move ahead. In the startup world, if you fail, you are probably better off to move ahead, right? So I think, just to kind of answer it in that manner, that it's really a part of the process, and we need to...
So Chintan, could you also, give a brief about how the external environment is changing and making it even more, in one way, harder or even simpler to succeed, because, and that change, which used to take decades earlier, is happening in like 2-3 years. So if you could talk a little bit about external environment and the role it plays, it also could give a perspective.
Yeah. No, I think and probably I'll delve into my own entrepreneurial experience. I was part of a social enterprise which we started in 2006. I mean, the term social enterprise probably wasn't mainstream at that point of time. Uh, we thought we were a startup which was addressing BOP was probably more prominent. But the external environment at that point of time was significantly underdeveloped as it is now. All these points that we're talking about, the fact that you need to fail fast, the fact that you need to prototype, you need to validate, you need to do your, you need to have positive unit economics that you need to validate ASAP and then scale up. I mean, all these things were probably things we did not know. We also, faced a situation somewhere down the line where the social impact investors would think that we were more mainstream, and the mainstream VCs would think that we are a social enterprise. And at some point of time, we were wondering where we should go. I mean, which are the kind of investors for us? We kind of got squeezed in the middle. But that was also because I think the funding ecosystem was also very limited. I'm talking about 2008, 2009, and Ragini, you've been there. It was largely microfinance driven as far as far as the BOP is concerned.
Yeah,
trying to do something else. So, but now you have many investors, and which is the good thing. So, various investors will have their own positioning, will have their own focus areas, expertise, domains, etc. So, it's very unlikely that you will get squeezed out in that manner. So, I think the ecosystem is pretty good. As you talked about, Ragini, there are 300 accelerators, incubators. All of these people, all of these folks do programs. A lot of these programs will have some initial grants, etc., for prototyping. In fact, one of the things that I tell startups is that you should be checking the websites of all of these 300 incubators on a regular basis, because all of them they will not have a reach that they can reach out to you. So, you need to be checking on a regular basis. You should be on their mailing list. And a lot of the initial funds that you require to do your early prototyping validations can come through schemes that they do before you approach a conventional or a mainstream investor.
Yeah, great. So there are a couple of questions from participants. I'll very quickly take them. Dr. Harshvardhan asks, is there a significant difference between business acumen and building up a startup?
Yes, I think so. I mean, this may be up for debate, but I have seen a lot of folks who are good at business, right? They are people who can kind of reduce costs and they can figure out how to do a contract and kind of negotiate and all that. Those are skills which are required, right? But they are skills that you require from the 1 to further stage, right? In the startup continuum, we say that there's a 0 to 1 stage, and then there is 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and all that. The 0 to 1 stage is really the startup phase, or the most critical startup phase, where you are with an idea or a prototype and you are trying to build a business around it. At that point of time, it's not really your business acumen which matters. It is a lot of it is really the processes that you follow, something which can be taught, right? So a large part of the 0 to 1 journey is understanding of how you use the build, measure, learn methodology, how you do quick prototyping, your emotional strength, that if you fail 3 times, that's okay, you are learning, you are moving ahead. Once you go from 2 to 3 later stages, etc., then obviously you have business acumen coming in, right? And a lot of the business acumen or people with that understanding can also be hired later, right? I mean, a lot of people think that, I'm not business minded. Can I be a good startup founder? The answer is yes. The business skills, the expertise, etc., hired later.
So it's a necessary but not sufficient condition.
Yeah,
you can very well be an innovator or an inventor and hire people with business. Great. So could you be a part-time entrepreneur? Could you be doing a job and also doing something? Is one question by Jayant. Moonlighting entrepreneur.
Most likely not. I mean, even 100% focus on entrepreneurship is less. Right? So if you can do more than 100% somehow, I don't know how, that's the ideal situation, but it has to be minimum 100%. Some of you may be kind of, so while that is good in theory, but some of you may have financial kind of requirements, etc. So you may be spending 10, 20, 30% time bootstrapping, doing other things just to make ends meet. But that's okay. I mean, that is over and above 100%. That's why we say you do moonlighting. So after your bed hours, you can do whatever to do the bootstrapping part. But from 9 to 8 or 9 in the daytime, you need to be working on it, and that's also less. So it requires a lot of effort and focus. I mean,
so you're either there 100% or you're not there. It can't be somewhere midway. Yeah. So, what happens after programming? I've been through this program, then what after that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this program is a different program. It's not a typical incubation accelerator program where there's typically we have a demo day or a pitch day or some networking with entrepreneurs, with investors, people who can give you network linkages and all that. This is not going to lead into a demo day. However, there are various programs that get done as part of the CIICO ecosystem. We do early stage incubation programs around something known as InnoCity. We do sectoral programs, financial inclusion, crafts, etc., that happen. So a lot of you can potentially apply to these programs, but you can also go in for other incubation programs. So in a way, I think this program prepares you to apply for various incubation acceleration programs. My sense is that you'll be better off. You'll have a better sense of how to apply. You'll have a better sense of what to do, what not to do, which incubator to go for, what sort of support to look for. So it sort of prepares you to go into a formal incubation program in that sense.
So we have some more interesting questions coming from the participants. They're saying, is there any age restriction for being an entrepreneur?
For being an entrepreneur, okay. I thought for applying in the program. No, for being an entrepreneur, I guess there's no age restriction. That's the good thing about entrepreneurship. Anyone can apply. I'm not sure whether we have one for the program. I think maybe Shashi will clarify it. I don't think so. This is a program where we have any age restriction. I mean, there may be a less than 18 kind of an issue. You may have to give a undertaking or something from your college or school in case. But I don't think we are focusing on students. We want people who are full-time, who are ready to start. So yeah, maybe Shashi can clarify towards the end.
Yeah, maybe Shashi can also give an ideal profile of an entrepreneur that they're looking for, including the long tail. You talked about women, you talked about others. So one question is, what if you missed a timing of a startup? Like you've gone ahead, made a product, but it's available in another country and even better. So what would you?
Yeah, so I think that happens all the time. I think if you follow the build, measure, learn loop, it's less likely that you will make that sort of a mistake. If you are taking a more conventional approach of building a product and then planning and then launching it, you are more likely to make that mistake. So the build, measure, learn, the lean startup prototype method of startup business model to a certain extent also ensures that you don't make that mistake, right? Because you're constantly launching and relaunching. So you'll get the feedback. People will say that, okay, boss, this is available. So you'll quickly pivot. So I think it all boils down to the process that you take.
Another great question from Jasmeer. He's asking, is entrepreneurship different from self-employment? If yes, how?
See, a self-employment business, if I may use the word, could become an entrepreneurial business, right? I mean, it could become something bigger. It could become something scalable, etc. But most entrepreneurial ventures, when we use the term, and it's really a term, and I'm kind of maybe using entrepreneurship and startups interchangeably to that extent. Most of these ventures will be scalable, right? They are also focused on solving a large problem, which a lot of people face. I mean, it will not be a very niche thing that you do in your locality, etc. But a lot of entrepreneurial ventures or startups may start like that. There's a very interesting article by Paul Graham called Do Things That Don't Scale. so what he's really trying to say is that, in your initial stages of validation, you should do things very, very local and almost in a manner which looks like not a startup. Once you have validated it, then you try and see how you use technology to scale it up. Because there are maybe 10 million other people who are facing the same problem which you have solved for 10 people in your college, school, locality, etc. First, do that, solve that problem, and then see how you can scale it up.
So think scale right from the beginning. The fact is that you shouldn't be doing something that will serve only 10 people.
Yes, think scale, but in the initial prototypes,
do it at a smaller scale.
Yes, do it at a smaller scale. Don't sort of scale into the prototype. It's the next step.
I got it. But it shouldn't be a problem that you solve is only for 10 people and you're solving only for 10 people.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there are some questions related to healthcare, and I guess I'm not putting them to you. And I think Shashi can say that there are several sector tracks also, which will answer things on like how does healthcare look like versus others. So I'm not asking that. And also there are some questions around, our society or teachers always focuses on, getting the right job, focus on your studies. And entrepreneurship is for somebody who just didn't manage to get job, or, it is a recipe for failure. That's the question that is there. So what would you say to the societal acceptance for entrepreneurship from your experience?
Yeah, so not really. I mean, an entrepreneurial process or journey is actually much tougher than trying to build a successful corporate career. Though at the same time, I think I also believe that there are some folks who excel in a corporate environment and probably can do better there. But there are some folks who can do better as an entrepreneurial venture. But definitely, entrepreneurship is not a kind of a second option if your corporate career doesn't take off, right? It needs to be definitely a conscious decision. It is not a second option or a poor man's alternative to a lack of a corporate career. Because it's probably much more challenging. It kind of challenges your entire being, whether you're emotional, physical, intellectual, everything, right? You will not have the comfort and the structures and the security of a corporate environment, though, you will have some other issues in a corporate environment, which you may not be facing in an entrepreneurial journey. But, the challenges that you face there are probably significantly higher or as big, perhaps. So, it can't be looked at as second figure to a corporate or to a lack of a corporate career.
So this is this question more for Shashi, I guess. Somebody is saying they have a corporate experience in management and sales, ex-servicemen. I'm now working on a tech product, which is available in market in some other variation. Can I request mentorship for this program? So I guess you can look at the eligibility and this. So Shashi, how are we doing on the time? And, could we...
Right. So Ragini, I think the conversation was very interesting and I didn't disrupt in that. We were overshot by 10 minutes. But again, I think I'll take around about 2-3 minutes just to explain more about Startup School and, what is our motive of doing it and how, entrepreneurs or startups benefit from that as well.
Yeah. So, and Shashi, what might help is leave your email ID or something, because there are many questions which are similar, so people can reach out to you and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
I've already shared the link for Startup School on the chat, and people who are interested, just, they can go through it. But I'll just take you through, the motive firstly, as Chintan also said that one of the motives is that typically we, as we do a lot of programs and we get a lot of applications, probably I think in thousands on an yearly basis for our different programs, right? But we are not able to support maximum, right? Our program only limits to a few handful startups that can be there. But there are a lot of good startups that we see a lot of opportunities. Sometimes it is a lack of mandates that restricts us, and sometimes the challenge on the part of startups is that they are basically not able to explain very well what they are trying to do. And sometimes the applications also, even if the product looks attractive or everything looks attractive, the application itself or the founders does not look very convincing in telling us, yes, this is something that can work in a long run. So that, restricts us on choosing those kind of people, because obviously we have to choose a very selected few. So that was one of the motives of doing a startup school, that founders are very well prepared for what is out there, initially. And even if they are not applying to us, but they get selected in some of the programs, because obviously we have known that each of these programs, whether it is our incubator or anybody else in the ecosystem, it ultimately helps a startup. So, and our motive is also that, most of these startups do apply to our programs and do get selected in our programs, depending on if the mandates meet, right? So, and, talking about more on the curriculum or a structure that we have developed, again, Chintan said that, this is hands-on thing, wherein we are not trying to teach, but typically we are trying to share some experiences of founders who have been in particular situations, and we are, driving topics around those situations, and whether it is, how do you create an opportunity, or how do you find an opportunity, how do you find a problem statement, and then how do you find a solution, right? That's the basic initiation, wherein we get a lot of applications wherein there is a problem, but there is a solution, but the problem and the solution sometimes do not even match, right? And then it becomes a challenging situation. So ideally, taking the startup from that stage, and then how do you design your products, and how do you scale to a particular, in a particular area, and then how do you stabilize? So these are, some functional aspects of what we'll be discussing. Apart from that, there are some capacity building, exercises that we'll be doing, whether it is how do you pitch, or whether it is internally about founders, about self-effectuation, and whether it is, women, oriented to women, and sensitization, and, specification to that. So these are some topics. Apart from that, we also have topics which are more on technology. So, there are a lot of terms today we use, whether it is blockchain, AI, or, anything else. And most of the founders, this looks like a hep word to use, right? But we will try to explain on, how do you integrate technologies within your startup, right? What's the thought process behind that, and when it is required. Thirdly, what we'll be doing is we'll be doing a lot of live case studies. So again, these case studies will be based, some of these will be based on, real life founders who have struggled through some things and challenges, and then found out a solution typically, and then we'll throw these case studies to the teams as well to solve those as part of the curriculum, right? So this is the overall view of, how we have structured Startup School. And I think there was another question typically on the investment part. So obviously we look forward that people from Startup School, graduate to our programs, right? So there's not a direct link, but typically I think we can say that most of these people can be eligible after a Startup School, depending on how they, imbibe that information that is being given. Is there any other question, Ragini?
So I was just, so what is getting clearer is that this is even a primer before a entrepreneur or a company qualifies to be in an incubator or an accelerator.
Absolutely.
This program.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
Yeah.
For many, yes, it is. For many, it is a way to, solve certain points or challenges that they might be facing at that particular stage. We are talking about a lot in that horizon, but sometimes a very specific things touches a startup as well.
Right. And, I was very curious. You could have chosen anybody to partner with you on this Startup School. Why Caspian Debt, which works with like really mature startups?
I think we have worked a lot with Caspian, whether it is, part of our, the pitches that we do and the startups that are being supported. So we have seen many startups coming from CIICO portfolio, which have been, supported by Caspian Debt, as well as, we have seen them flourish, right? So it's what we have noticed that anyways, it's not only about funding and how do you fund a startup, right? It's more on the strategic support. It's more on, how do you give soft support or give strategic support to a startup. And that is where I think Caspian Debt, from our experience, has been an entity which has, not only with funding, but has supported startups in strategy and, building startups from ground level up. So basically, once startups get a huge sum of funding, right? Sometimes it becomes for entrepreneurs even to manage that kind of money, and how do you grow and scale in that. So I think Caspian Debt is not only a funder for these startups, but typically a kind of a support system as well. And that is where we saw that typically that kind of experience and the portfolio currently that Caspian Debt has got, the founders itself can also help in startup school and help, train some of these entrepreneurs within their journey as well.
So have the scale mindset right from the beginning.
Absolutely. So I think that is there. When we are making impact, make it for a larger audience typically.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And for startup school, information that is already provided on the website link that I've shared is we'll be beginning in January. These are weekend sessions that we'll be having on Fridays and Saturdays, Friday evenings and Saturday mornings, couple of hours in these 2 days, and it will end in the month of March. Typically, it's more of a 10-week program schedule that we have kept for it. So it is fairly comfortable, even people who want to go into entrepreneurship but have some other commitments, or people who are already into entrepreneurship but cannot dedicate that much of time. So this is fairly something that we have scheduled that can easily people can participate in as well. Yep.
So
right, I think for any other questions, I am just typing my email ID as well in this, and people can get in touch with me on the mail, and if they have any specific questions, we will be shortly closing the applications as well. So somebody who wants to apply, please do ASAP into it. And also Caspian has, when they partnered, how they have supported not only us, but the startups is that we are able to, provide a scholarship for the course as well. And these scholarships range up to 90%, and for most of the people who apply, right? So do check it out. So for us, Caspian has been a partner wherein they have made sure that this education or this kind of a course reaches out to the depths of India, and typically reaches out to tier 2, tier 3 cities where the startups require at least, this kind of support, where the ecosystem might not be that matured as well. So with this, I think we have overshot time by a lot. I'd like to thank Ragini first, and and Chintan for bringing us these insights about early stage entrepreneurship and his own experiences as well in this segment. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you, Chintan. That was useful.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, and all the best to all the participants who joined.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.